In the space above the wardrobe. The rain drumming at Laura's window nearly drowned out her cat's wheezing. Octavius, the ancient tabby, lay curled beside her pillow. Later in the night, as the temperature dropped, he was likely to burrow under her blankets to leech off her body heat. "You doing okay, champ?" Laura asked as Octavius gave an extra gurgly exhale. He blinked slowly in response. The vet had said he was doing remarkably well for his age, and Laura had interpreted that as a gentle warning that she might not have her childhood pet with her for much longer. She turned back to her phone and continued scrolling as she filtered through her Facebook feed in case anything new had cropped up. It was well past her usual bedtime, and she was procrastinating in the vain hope that the rain might stop so she could have an undisturbed sleep. When it rained at night, her dreams were always erratic and disturbing, and they often developed into nightmares before morning arrived. Octavius gave an extra deep wheeze, and Laura looked at him. His eyes, fixed on something above her head, had widened into the perfect circles he usually reserved for when he begged for food, or saw another cat on the backyard fence. Laura followed his gaze towards the dark patch above her wardrobe in the corner of her room. There was only a foot of space between the wardrobe and the ceiling, which meant neither the room's light nor Laura's lamp were able to completely scatter the shadows there. Laura squinted into the darkness, but as far as she could tell, it was empty. "What's the matter? Seen a moth?" She gave Octavius' head a brief scratch. The cat showed his front fangs, and a low rumble echoed from his throat. Laura turned back to the corner, suddenly uncertain. Octavius really seemed to think something was there. Even though she couldn't see anything, Laura found herself focused on the area, matching her cat's gaze, as though a shape could appear in the thin block of shadows at any moment. "Enough," Laura said, shaking herself out of the stupor and putting her phone back on the bedside table. Octavius maintained his stare, and although she should thought his tail might be a little puffed, he was no longer growling. "I don't know what's up with you tonight, Oct, but you'd better get over it. Good night." She gave her cat's head a final scratch. Not that he responded. Then turned off her bedside lamp and wiggled under the covers. The rain continued to beat at the window, creating a strange symphony with Octavia's thick breathing and the ticking clock. Laura closed her eyes and tried to sink into sleep, but she was excruciatingly aware that Octavius was still next to her and that his wide eyes continued to focus on the shadowed corner. Sometime during the next half hour, between the beating rain and wheezing breaths, Laura fell into an unpleasant, disturbed sleep. She dreamed she'd rolled over and opened her eyes to see the creature crouched above her wardrobe. It was entirely black, which allowed it to blend into the shadows perfectly. Water dripped from its moist, leathery skin and ran down the side of the bookcase to soak into the carpets. Its eyes were the worst. They were large and round, with horizontal pupils like a cat's. They flicked from Octavius to Lauren's sleeping form, back and forth, as hunger drew its lips apart to expose the many rows of shiny white teeth packed inside its mouth. Lauren started awake with a gasp. It took her a moment to remember where she was. Then she scrambled to turn on her bedside lamp and scanned the space above her wardrobe. Empty. She sighed and rubbed her palms against her eyelids. A low rumble from her side drew her attention to Octavius. He was crouched in the space beside her pillow, with his hackles raised and his bushy tails curled around his body, defensively. His huge green eyes remained fixed on the corner of the room, the space where she dreamed she'd seen the creature. "There's nothing there," Laura said, more to reassure herself than to calm her cat. She looked back at the corner for the final time. Something glistened on the side of her wardrobe. Water drops, catching her lamp's light, dripping down the wood towards the carpet. Lauren opened her mouth, but no noise escaped her. Lightning flashed through Lauren's window and dispersed the darkness in the corner of the room. The split second of sharp white light was just enough to illuminate the leathery flesh, the wide, hungry eyes, and the long, shiny teeth hidden in the darkest corner of the space above the wardrobe.